So the number one thing you are trying to achieve when photographing a woman is to emphasize her assets and reduce her flaws. And the reason I say that is you can't pose always hips back and chest forward because that might not be the most flattering. Tends to be, though, what is more flattering for most people. Number two is typically when standing, never have your feet ever of the subject flat-footed and even. Never. Just don't do it. So instead what you want to do is if your subject is standing, always have the weight on one of the legs and one of the feet uneven. So what that translates for me is if you're just kicking your weight to one side, turn a foot. So now my feet are uneven and the weight's uneven. If I'm going to kick my weight back, pop up the front knee a little bit. So have your weight uneven, not flat-footed. Number three is curves and negative space. Make sure you don't have mergers. Make sure that you can actually see the outline of your subject. And so everything is not bunched up in one place, but instead you are showing shape and line because of that negative space. And for hands, for posing women's hands, you want to make sure the hands are always soft. So if you need to wiggle their fingers, wiggle their fingers. If you need to tell them to trace their hands around the side of their face, maybe they can't actually pose nicely with their hands, maybe you'll try crest the side of your face and there. Or instead of posing their hands in their hair, they're doing this. Maybe you say, just trace your hand along the outside of your hair. Okay, now twirl your fingers in your hair. Good. Whatever it requires so that it's a natural movement. Also make sure that the hands aren't obscuring the face. I know I have seen a lot of little kids pose, they pose with both hands up, but when you do this for a woman, you can't see her jawline or her neck. If you can keep it in mind when photographing a woman, you want a long neck and a defined jawline. You actually do want to see the jaw and the neck. So this wouldn't work, but maybe this would, or this would, or this would, something like that. So watch the hands not obscuring the face and the neck, and always keep them soft. And then the final tip is what we have over and over again for women, chin out and down. It brings you more to their eyes, it defines the jawline, and then for older subjects, it makes sure the skin here is nice and tight. So these would be my top 5 women's posing guidelines. Okay, well now that I've said that, there are bajillion ways to pose women, like endless ways, and I think that's why people get overwhelmed, is because there's too many ways, and there's so many ways, you don't need too many ways. But there is something I wanted to address, different types of women's posing. Know that what makes your pose good for a woman is that woman's body type, their flaws and assets, and then, of course, what you're trying to say with that shoot. It's not just like one great pose for everything. It really depends. So I'm going to give you poses that I really like and poses that I use over and over again, but it's going to depend. So the differences here that I wanted to draw attention to is fashion is usually very confident. It can be about curves, but it tends to be more about, I would say, power, strong posture, and a presence. Okay, well then I would say portrait is more just about flattering the person, and it's much more about their expression and their personality. That's what you're trying to have shine through. So the pose is great because you want to flatter their body type, but the expression is like the first and the foremost most important thing. And then finally, for boudoir, it tends to be the body's a bit more important. The body is going to be the emphasis. You can have a great portrait that doesn't really have a good pose, but for boudoir, if you don't have that great pose, it's not going to be a great boudoir image. So these are the things you would want to keep in mind a little bit different. So I would say the air about it for a fashion image, whereas for portrait, it's that personality, it's that connection, and then boudoir would be all about the curves and all about their shape. So those would be the essentials. I'm going to go ahead and show you some of my favorite women's poses. Nothing too extravagant, but ones that you can definitely master and then build from there. So, hi. How are you? I was going to say hi, but I just saw you.
Yeah, that's true. Hi again.
All right. You want to introduce yourself, say hi to everybody?
Hi, I'm Tessa.
Oh, I don't know. She might.
Do you have a mic or no?
Yeah, are you mic'd or no? So I know.
This is Tessa. She is
Oh,
one of our wonderful
then I won't-
PAs here, and is an actress and a wonderful actress at that.
I was not sure if.
As
people
is
did
Frederick,
hear
by
her.
the way.
Yes.
Saw them both in a show recently.
And I passed out. I was supposed to see it, and I passed out. I just fallen asleep.
That's all right.
It sounded amazing. Okay, cool. So, for women's poses, so I can already tell, like, she's a performer, so she already kind of knows, I could tell you kind of know how to hold your body. So I'm just going to say, don't look bad. Okay, yeah, okay. Because I very specifically requested not professional models, so you would all know that you can mold and pose people regardless of their posing experience. Okay, so perfect, right there's great. Okay, so this is going to be a plain, regular standing shot, flat-footed and everything. Excellent. You look like a robot lady. Yeah, I like that. Okay. All right, so she is one of those lovely, lucky people that she has negative space with her arms by her side. Really? Really? Okay, yeah, that's so much better. Yes, okay. And yet you still look cute that way. What is this? Okay, no, really, I'm just teasing you. So with your arms at your side, she already has some shape, but let's take a look at maybe something like that. It's not bad. She already is very slender, but it's a very static pose. So as I said, everything kind of leads you straight up and down. So let's talk about the essentials of women's posing. All right, the first thing that I said before is that you want to pose from ground up. Because if I tell her to do one thing and then pose her legs later, it doesn't quite work. It's a little bit uncomfortable. So I can decide how I want to pose. So I have a couple ones that I really love. The first one I'm going to do isn't going to be full length. I want you to cross your knee over. And yeah, perfect. And cross over even more, right there. Okay, so what I want you to see is how this point is really narrow now. If I crop right there, the end of my photo goes poof, and it ends right there, which is great, okay, because it's a very narrowing point. And what that emphasizes when you're looking at the photo is curve. Your eye starts looking for curve. So I'm going to have you do that, and just do whatever's comfortable, however you need to shift your weight, okay? All right, let's take a look there. Perfect. Already looks great. So I did that first step. From ground up, I decided how I want the feet. Notice her feet aren't flat foot, okay? It's not even weight. She's got one kicked up. Okay, the next thing I'm going to have you do is make sure that you kind of kick that back hip just back a little bit. Good, perfect. And I'm going to have you lean out towards everybody. So this gets smaller, that came to a point, this gets bigger. Looks good. Okay, great. And so now she's already doing this, which is pretty good, is she's giving herself negative space. She is, by default, a lot of people have their hands on their sides. Now what I'm noticing for her is she puts her hands back like that, too far. When you do this, it decreases the negative space, and it also is foreshortening. So what I see, so do that again, yeah, okay. So I don't see arms. Okay, so let's take a look. Notice the bottom, you'll see the very bottom of her body tapers out nicely. Okay, so I have that nice little curve at the bottom. It's not terrible with the hands, but it is a little bit of shorter arm and little fingers. So I'm going to have you just real soft on the waist. So she's posing hands all nicely, so I didn't have too much work to do there. Real soft on the waist, good. And so you could do two hands. Okay, you can do it like that. So we'll start off like this. Perfect. Good. And I'm going to have you tilt your head just a little bit towards me. Great. So very nice, straightforward women's pose. But if I wanted to make it look a little bit more interesting, I have different things. I already started at the feet. I set the feet, okay? I already set her hips because I want them to be slenderized. Okay, so I set feet, knees, hips. So what I have to work with are shoulders, hands and arms, and her chin, because I kind of set the foundation. So she can bring her hand up. So would you put that hand on your hip, the right hand on your hip, and bring the other one up soft to your neck, okay? And don't tilt your head so much. A little bit too much looks like oh, my neck hurts, like that kind of. You want it to be like soft. I think that looks great. And notice, do it again. See how it's obscuring her jawline? And we want to see jawline, so I'm going to have you set it just real soft more on your neck. Great. Good? So what I see are triangles, triangles, nice curve, and it ends at the bottom. So I'll take nice, beautiful. Good. And I like just that little bit of head tilt. Good. Okay, so that would be a nice, flattering women's pose. If you wanted to go with a little bit different example, maybe you wanted to switch up the hands a little bit, you could, for example, do that whole same thing all over again, but you could have her kind of hand across her clavicle. Or you could have her put her hand in front of her mouth in kind of like a playful way. Or you could put your hand back on her hip. Or she could bring this hand over to the other side. So I'm just kind of setting things that I like and then moving the last piece in question. So I think of it kind of like building blocks. I build them and then I have this whole variable to work with. Okay, I like that, then I have this variable to work with. And then so I build and then fix the last variable. So one other good standing pose is if you don't want to do the legs kicked, hips kicked back and everything, I'm going to have you kick one foot over, okay? And so notice what I'm going to have her do, and she already does it, is kick up on her toe. If it's flat foot, there's not enough curve. It's like kind of just wide. There's not actually a lot of shape. When she kicks it out on her toe, now there's more of a line there. So what I can have her do is I say, okay, I set the feet. I like that. Her legs look long that way. Okay, that looks good. How about you kick out your hip a little bit more? I'm like, all right, see that? So that huge difference. I'm going to grab a shot of that so we have it. So unkick out your weight. Okay, perfect. And now kick out your weight. And it adds a ton of shape. So if you want to put that out there for me. Okay. So now there's like a lot of curve there. I like that. It looks very pretty. So then what you can do is I like that curve. I want to emphasize it. So I'm going to have you put your hand soft right on the hip, a little bit lower even. So when I'm doing this is I'm saying like, look right here. Look at all this curve. Look at this little waist. Okay, good. And so this last hand, I kind of wanted to emphasize her hip. So this last hand, that's my last variable. Okay, I could put it here. I could put it here. Put it here. Like I can kind of figure out what I want to do with it, but I just want to make sure there's no mergers. So maybe try just there, hips kicked out, and lean your chest forward just a little. So I'm making sure I'm emphasizing, reducing, adding curve, working with that last variable. So.
Lindsay, in that middle picture, Jamie in Texas says she kind of looks like she's missing an arm. Do you think a lighter shirt would help with that?
Yeah, absolutely. If I were shooting this, actually, I'd pick maybe not actually solid black, or if she's wearing a black dress, that would be perfect because then it would be, let's say she's wearing a black dress with no sleeves, and then that would be perfect because it's all about curve. So when they wear all black, posing couples is like, yeah, that's my one exception for like wearing solid dark colors because then they like become blobs. So I like them to like be a little bit in contrast. Yeah. So yeah, definitely, you could definitely do that. All right, so I'll take that last photo, good. And she just has nice, super soft hands. Good. All right, and let's check how that tether's doing. So if it were boudoir, instead of going out, I could always like, maybe could you tuck that leg in a little bit more? Put your hand on your thigh and kind of lean. I mean, notice, I'm just like little tweaks. For boudoir, I want it to be more sensual and more curvy. So yeah, I'm gonna have you do that. And this time, I'm gonna have you kind of put your hand on your thigh right here. Yeah, and then arm up. So if it were boudoir, I want a little more curve, so I'm gonna turn you just a little bit that way and arch your back. So now I'm looking at curve, nice soft hands, and it makes my eye do this, all the way up. Versus before, it's angular. It's cute, that's fun. But this, when she goes ahead, brings that leg in, now I'm following curves. So let me get one more. Perfect. Perfect. Great. So I was going to say imagine this is a boudoir shot, so I'm basically saying everyone imagine her in underwear. Oh, wow, thank you. Thanks for that. Okay, so those would be like the super basic go-tos. I usually do something where the leg kicked out. She can cross her arms. She can put, so it's set those variables.